Well, it's been a few weeks since my last video. A little over 2 weeks, I should say. Today is April 3rd, and my last video was on, I think, March 14th. That was the one about 2 weeks being into P90X. So I'm 5 weeks into it now. Still not seeing results just because my diet, the diet really is the key. I mean, I have more than one confirmation on that now. There's a lot of sunshine behind me, but don't let that fool you. It's still pretty cold out here. Yeah, it's only 46 degrees, but it feels a lot colder than that. Climbing over these trees here, these leaners. That's what I have to deal with. Hopefully that doesn't come down on my head. That would be a bad thing. Yep, not good. We got to get through here, get through this trail, headed back to my usual sit-down spot. But anyway, wanted to give you some updates on the coronavirus here in Saginaw, Michigan. Well, Michigan especially. I've been watching this since the start, and I'm kind of a geek when it comes to studying these things and numbers and such. So I really tend not to believe what the media tells me. A lot of it's hype, and you really only know what they want you to know. You really only hear what they want you to hear. So hang on, I gotta go below these. That's what I have to walk through to get to my usual sit-down spot. So anyway, so the media will tell you pretty much only what they want you to hear, and a lot of times they'll tell you things just so the public doesn't panic. But I've been watching the coronavirus from the start, and on March 14th, when I did my last video, Michigan only had 33 cases. Well, a rule of thumb is that the amount of cases double every 4 days. As of yesterday, Michigan is at, I want to say, 10,719 cases, if I remember correctly. So that's huge. Deaths. We had our first death, I think, on March 18th. First three. We had like 3 die in one day. Deaths, we're up to, as of yesterday, April 2nd, Michigan is up to 417 deaths, which is not good. Now, what makes us different than Italy? We are following the same trajectory as Italy. We're about 2 weeks behind Italy as a country. Italy is devastated, of course. Spain, devastated. They've just recently had a march over there where everybody came and from different parts of the country for this march. Then everybody left. And then they wonder why they're getting kicked in the teeth with coronavirus cases now. So New York, the worst state in the country right now with all the coronavirus cases. They got word of it like February 2nd, March, and it wasn't that big of a deal, but they were cautious. Nobody really knows what to expect other than what we've seen from China and Italy and now Spain. So we're almost to my sit-down spot here. I just gotta go under this log. It's nothing like being a Boy Scout again. Yeah, but anyway, back to the coronavirus here. I've been keeping an eye on the United States, and I've also been keeping an eye on Michigan because that's my home state. It really upset me when people were sending memes of this, and people were just joking about it and not taking it seriously. So, and I know people do that because that's how the human mind protects itself, is when it's afraid or through trauma, is from comedy. It's almost like a buffer to protect the brain from not having to experience that type of trauma. There are other ways the brain protects itself, but that's only one of the ways. So I could kind of understand the memes. There still are a lot of people out there saying that the death rate's only, 0.3% or 3%. If you look at the cases, they have closed cases and then they have active cases. If you look at the closed cases, the percentages are much higher. With the United States only having like 225, I think it's over 250,000 cases now. The closed cases from recovery to death, the death rate is about 35.9%, which is huge. Now keep in mind, there's still 250,000 cases in the country. Those are active still, which means they don't have an outcome. Of those, I think 95% of those cases are mild. Mild meaning you're not hospitalized. You could be at home. You could be having severe diarrhea, fever on your deathbed at home, but you're not hospitalized. You don't need hospital care, so that means you're a, quote, mild case, which leaves the remaining critical cases at like 5% of the remainder of the unclosed cases. If you look at Poland's death rate compared to their recovered cases is about 50% to 50%. Now these percentages of the death rate should drop because inevitably more people are supposed to recover than die from this. From what I've studied, death comes quick. It comes within about 2 weeks if you are going to die. There are several factors that affect it. If you are overweight, obese, or if you have any type of lung issue or breathing issue, any type of high blood pressure, or a weak immune system, and you get it, you're pretty much going to be shit out of luck for the most part. There's a lot of talk about ventilators right now, and if you have ventilators, ventilators are not the cure. I was listening to a doctor, and he said that once you go on the ventilator, the death rate on ventilators is 70 to 86%, which means you've only got a 14 to 30% chance of coming off of that ventilator. So that's kind of scary. I mean, a lot of people think the ventilators will help save, but it's going to come down to, when we run out of ventilators, that people are going to, or the doctors, the hospital will have to choose who gets the ventilator and who doesn't. So that would not be a job that I would want to have. Now, me being sort of a numbers geek when it comes to this kind of thing, I ran some projections on the cases for Michigan, and what I've seen, and this is how I came up with my numbers. The only country we really have to model from is China. So according to the numbers, China peaked. They went up and up and up and up, and then they peaked at about 7 weeks. So that means they're still flat. They're still getting new cases every day, but they've peaked. So hopefully those numbers should start to go down. I'm looking at Michigan now, from when Michigan started. Michigan's peak should be at the end of April, the first week of May, maybe the second week of May, somewhere around there. Now, the past few days, the case rate has been going up about 13% a day. Now, using those projections, I ran them through Excel. That means May 7th of this year, God help us, Michigan would have over 1.25 million active cases of coronavirus in the state on May 7th, if those percentages stay steady. That's not good, because if 10% of the people get hospitalized, then that means there's going to be over 120,000 people that are going to need these hospital beds. So it's our system in southeastern Michigan, where I grew up, is already at capacity. Hospitals are full, beds are full. They're starting to. There's an idea to move the patients from southeast Michigan up north, a little bit further north in Michigan, to some of the more rural areas, rural hospitals. But because the coronavirus is starting to balloon out from the Detroit area, it's starting to creep north. So every day we're starting to see more cases in Genesee County and Saginaw County, Bay County. They're starting to creep up. So that's scary. If we do get 1.25 million cases by May 7th at the peak, that is it's unfathomable to me. Now that means we'll still get cases after that. They'll still come down, but that's when we will peak. That just blows my mind. And if we use the percentages of the death rate that we've had from the beginning, where the death rate keeps climbing up, on May 7th, Michigan is projected to have over 53,000 dead from the coronavirus. That's not good. If you're, I haven't been to Comerica Park, but I remember the old Tiger Stadium that held at capacity, that held about 53,000 people. And I've been in that when that was packed. So that is a tremendous amount of people to have dead from this virus. That is what concerns me. Now, when this thing first started, a lot of people were not taking it seriously. Friends, family, co-workers, a lot of people were still joking about it. And I kept hearing the old adage that, oh yeah, only 30% get it, and of that 30% that get it, only 1% is going to need to go to the hospital. And then of that 1% that needs to go to the hospital, only 1% is going to need a ventilator. And of the 1% that needs a ventilator, only 1% is going to die. And it was just flawed numbers. And I'm like, I'm shaking my head going, I can't believe that I'm hearing this shit, because nobody knows. And I'm just looking at raw numbers. I'm not looking at conjecture or what I think is going to happen. I'm just using trends, the trends that I've seen in China, the trends I've seen in Italy. By the way, the Italy death rate for recovered cases, I think, is at like 40%, if I remember correctly. Now, again, when you die pretty quick. You die in like 2 weeks. So, and you recover, ideally we should have more recoveries than deaths. So that death rate should go down. But all this talk of like, death rate of 3%, death rate of whatever, 6%, that may be the people who are dead now compared to the people who are currently the active cases. But some of those people who have the active cases, those people will die. So based on my numbers, I'm predicting for Michigan at least a 10 to 13% death rate based on the numbers that I've seen. And again, I'm not listening to the news. I'm not going by what anybody else says. These are just my raw numbers, the numbers that I have now, and percentages and trends based on what I've seen in Italy and China. And we're about 2 weeks behind Italy from what they have. And, they've been overrun for a while. They've been on lockdown. Speaking of lockdown, here we're not even locked down. You have essential businesses open, but a lot of those businesses really aren't, quote, essential, meaning, life or death, a quality of life kind of thing. So and again, you have to throttle and find that balance between, hey, we don't want to shut down the entire economy, but we don't want people to die either. So how do we still keep the economy going and not have everybody unemployed and have a huge loss of life? But right now, only being about 2 weeks into this shutdown. No, we're not even 2 weeks into the shutdown. Governor Whitmer issued the stay-at-home order on March 23rd. So we're only like 10 days into this, 11 days into this, and unemployment's already sky high. Hospitals are already at capacity in the southeast, in southeast Michigan. There's a shortage on masks and gowns and things like that. So, I mean, hats off to everybody who's working in this and doing their best with what they have. Realistically, that's all we can do. I've heard stories from doctors in New York where the hospitals are so full that they just send people home and say, hey, you're pretty much on your own. You know, if you can breathe on your own, we really don't have room for you in the hospital. So you're going to have to go home and recover. And if you recover, you do, great. If you can't breathe, come back and see us. So it's my guess that a lot of people will have to do some sort of at-home recovery. You know, New York is kind of like Little Italy right now, being overrun and with the system. And a few days ago, when Governor Cuomo of New York was asking for 30,000 ventilators, and President Trump had said that you didn't need 30,000 ventilators. If you look at 3 million people, and let's say 30% get it. I'm sorry, like 1 million people, and 30% get the coronavirus, which is that very well could happen, and I'll tell you why here in a second, based on some numbers I've seen. Then that means 300,000 people will have that. Now, if you have 30,000 ventilators, divide that into 300,000. I want to say that's one ventilator per every 100 people. So if you have 30,000 patients that are sick, then that means, you know, 30,000 people of like 1 million is 300,000. If only 10% of those people are hospitalized, that's 30,000. So that means only one person out of 100 would have a ventilator with 30,000 ventilators. So I'm not sure what they're going to do. I've heard there were doctors that were making 2 ventilators out of 1, and I heard a story of one doctor, he had 9 patients running off of 1 ventilator. So, I mean, good for him, good for the ingenuity. But so anyway, going back to the numbers where I think they're higher. In Saginaw County today, April 3rd, with the new cases that just hit today, I don't have the new numbers for Michigan, but I have them for Saginaw County. I gotta switch hands here. There we go, much better. My arm is getting sore. So for the new numbers for Saginaw County, I hope I'm not upside down. Let me switch this back. Okay. So anyway, the new numbers for Saginaw County, we're at 90 confirmed coronavirus cases. So of those tested, they're still waiting for a few hundred more tests to come back. But of those that have come back negative and those that have come back positive, I want to say those that have come back positive are at 48%. So just as a general guideline, if these, in theory, if 48% of the people that are tested are positive, that's huge. These numbers are just going to continue to keep going up. So again, this is something that nobody's ever dealt with. So nobody really knows what to do. It's my understanding now that the Saginaw County Health Department has put out an order to all essential businesses that they have to set up a screening table when the people go to work. And you have to have hand sanitizer there. You have to take their temperature. You have to ask them if they're coughing, if they've been exposed to anybody within 14 days who's had the coronavirus. So even before you go into your shift and work, they have this makeshift, triage area, I guess, where before you can even punch in and get to work. So they're going to ask you if you're sick, if you've been exposed. So that's going to be every day until they say otherwise. So, and again, with today being April 3rd, and Michigan should peak, in my estimate, right around May 7th. So we still have 1 month to go of these increased numbers. So I'm not sure what's going to happen. I hope to God for the best, but we've just walked over the threshold of this, and the system already seems to be overrun. Nobody really knows what to do. We have some of the smaller business here making homemade masks. So the only thing you could do would be just to protect yourself as best as you can, avoid people, And if you have relatives that are like 60 years or older and they're obese and they have breathing issues or heart disease or high blood pressure, if they get it, God help us. I mean, there will be a lot of people saying, pray for grandma, pray for grandpa, because they're in the hospital now and we can't go see them. And then with the average time from infection to death being 14 days, from what I've read, we're going to have a lot of funerals here in July and August. And, I just wonder if people will still be joking about this then, like they are now, or maybe take it a little more seriously than we are. And again, I'm not faulting people because, as human beings, we don't know what we don't know. Nobody has immunities to this. This is a new virus. It's a brand new virus to the human species. So everybody will get this at some point in their life, whether you're young or old. I mean, have you never had a cold? Have you never had the flu? At some point you will get this strain of COVID-19, and your body's either going to have to fight it and deal with it, or it's going to die off. So that's what's going to suck. We're going to lose a lot of people. And a lot of people are saying in Italy that it's older people, but in the United States, it's killing younger people too. And I think that's because we have such a high obesity rate and lung issues, heart disease issues in younger patients. So I just see that, it's going to kill a lot more younger Americans than it did in Italy. Italy, it was mostly older people. Well, like I said, I mean, these are just the facts that I know, the facts that I've seen, with the numbers. I hope that things get better for all of us, but I don't see that happening for another at least 5 weeks. And it's like, I'm going to have to go back to work soon and deal with this. And I just don't want to be around people. I just want to get through this, and, because if I get it, the odds are that my family members are going to get it. And some of them, if they get it, they will not make it, which is sad. And I don't want to be burying any of my loved ones soon. So please take this seriously. And if you're in a state or an area that does not have the coronavirus now, it's coming to your front door. It will be all over America soon. There's no way around it. So please don't take this lightly. You have to prepare for it and be ready, because the entire face of the country now, from my perspective, has changed. There is no more normal going back to the way it used to be. The whole face of the country has changed now, socially, medically, individually. Everything's changed just from 2 months ago from the way it was. So, I mean, it sucks to lose that freedom we had, but hopefully one day we can get it back, once everybody has this and builds up some immunity to it, or, God help us, a vaccine of some kind. That would be nice, but still, that's like 18 months out. So, but anyway, everybody, be safe, and I'll check in with you probably next week sometime, just to give you some updates on the numbers. So be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.